Hi everyone. Thank you very much. I'm Orlando Ruiz Jr. Welcome to another classic movie review. I am a huge 007 fan. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always loved these films. I want to talk about every film in the series. So far, I've talked about the first four films on my channel, so it's been a while since my last 007 movie review. Now it's finally time for me to get into the fifth film in the series. Once again, Sean Connery returning to the role of 007 James Bond in 1967's You Only Live Twice, based on a 1964 book from Ian Fleming, his 11th novel but 12th book in the Bond series. This movie was directed by Gilbert, who directed 1966's Alfie. So the very beginning of the film with the pre-title sequence opens in a very fun and exciting way with Bond pulling off this very elaborate plan in order to fake his death to give himself a bit more wiggle room so he can investigate the big bad guy, the head of Spectre that he's been trying to get to in the previous films. This film marks the first time where we get to see the character of James Bond wear his official Navy uniform, which is part of the character's history. That's something that doesn't really happen that often in the movies. Every now and then we get to see Bond wearing his Navy uniform. I believe the character gets to wear it in the 10th film where Roger Moore has it on in one scene in The Spy Who Loved Me. And I believe Pierce Brosnan got to wear the uniform in one scene in his film Tomorrow Never Dies from '97. Once again, the gang is all back. Bernard Lee as M, Lois Maxwell as Moneypenny. The Moneypenny scene here with Bond is a fun one where it involves a submarine, and I don't want to spoil too much. As a matter of fact, when it comes to the plot and like the whole reason why Bond is on this mission, I don't want to give it away because at the very beginning of the film in the pre-title sequence, one of the first things that you see is something kick off the story, and that right there is pretty surprising when you watch it for the first time. So I don't want to give you too many details about the story or the mission. All I do want to say is that Bond's mission takes him to Japan. Because of the whole faking his death scheme that he pulls off early in the film, Bond can operate a little smarter in this one by using an alias, unlike in the first few movies where he goes around just announcing himself to everybody. Whenever he checks in the hotel, he uses his actual name when you think a spy would use an alias. I think for a little bit in the second one, From Russia with Love, when he's with Anya traveling by train, he uses an alias with her for a little bit. But other than that, he's usually using his real name, and I'm always thinking, use an alias, dude. But in this one, he goes by Mr. Fisher for a little bit, so at least they do that with this one. Not very long after his arrival in Japan, and after a little tussle with some bad guys, Bond ends up meeting a character known as Tiger, who is basically the head of the Japanese version of MI6 out there. And even though he's like a Japanese M, he gives more of a pimp vibe with all the women that he has around there waiting to massage Bond at Bond's request. Through the Tiger character, Bond meets the character of Aki, a pretty Japanese girl who is also an agent working for Tiger, and Tiger assigns her to help out Bond with his mission and assist him in anything he needs. And Bond, he has them needs, and so, because of that, there's a bit of that will there, won't they kind of deal, and she plays hard to get, and as an agent, she's not all that resourceful. She doesn't really fight or anything like that. I think what they use her mostly for is luring men, like in the way that Bond is lured when he meets Tiger for the first time. Now, in terms of the action in the film, regarding the Sean Connery era, I think this film has some of the best action from that era in terms of the set pieces and how big some of these action scenes are. There's one scene where you have a kind of an overhead helicopter shot of Bond running across a rooftop, and you see him going through one bad guy after another as all these bad guys are trying to come after him, and the shot just stays on him as he's running across the roof, and he just takes out one guy after another. There's a very fun fight with Bond fighting this huge guy that has this sword, and Bond grabs the nearest weapon he can find, which ends up being a couch that he uses to the best effect. That's a very fun scene. There's also a scene where Bond is on a plane and he is trapped, and the pilot jumps out of the plane in an attempt to kill Bond with the plane crashing. And it's one of those moments where Bond is gonna have to escape in the nick of time before this plane crashes. Very fun scene. When it comes to any of the scenes with James Bond actually doing some mano-a-mano fisticuffs, some combat against other bad guys, all those fighting scenes are choreographed pretty well to the point where they still pretty much hold up for the most part. Every now and then you see something in there that you think, okay, that could have been shot at a better angle, but yeah, for the most part, all that fighting still holds up very well. If there's anything that hasn't aged very well on this movie, it is definitely the plot point of Bond going completely Japanese for his mission. Yes, you heard me right. They actually make Bond Japanese in this film. They use makeup to make his eyes look more Asian. They give him a bowl cut wig, and the idea is he's supposed to pass himself off as a farmer from the village. But It's a real stupid plan. It makes no sense and it completely drags the movie down for a little bit and it's unnecessary. But then the movie does something very cool which almost makes up for that. Not quite all the way, but just a little bit by letting Bond train with ninjas and allowing Bond to become one for his mission. The very end of the film sees Bond going up against the main bad guy who I won't reveal because that's always a fun surprise when you watch this for the first time, but it really has a really cool build up to that reveal. And the end takes place in a hollowed out volcano, which is one of the ultimate bad guy lairs in any film. Even by today's standards, to this day, I think the volcano set is still very impressive with how massive it was and the huge amount of extras that they had in there for this huge battle at the end. A bunch of ninjas dropping down on ropes and explosions going off everywhere, Bond throwing grenades at bad guys. Because this is a classic 60s Bond film, you have a high quality production, you have a fun concept for the story. It's a fast-paced film, a lot of fun action. All the classic Bond signatures are in there. And once again, it's a lot of fun to see James Bond being played by the great Sean Connery. Only this time around, it doesn't feel like his enthusiasm is on the same level as it was in the previous films. Around this time, he was starting to get a bit disenchanted with the role, and so it really shows in the film, and sometimes it really does feel like he's kind of phoning it in, which does kind of add to why this movie isn't as good as the previous ones, in my opinion. And because of the camp level, and because I prefer my Bond a little more on the serious side with, a little more gritty and a little more down to earth and a little bit more realistic, this one to me isn't one of the best in the series. Even though I do have a lot of fun with it, it's still enjoyable, still entertaining. And in terms of the Sean Connery era, I think this is definitely one of his weakest and definitely the film that was the beginning of the kind of chinks in the armor in the Bond series every now and then with the subpar movie coming out every now and then. And that's not to say that this movie doesn't have its fans. I'm sure it does. And to me, this is still a classic and a fun Bond film. But for me, it's a 2.5 star Bond film. 1967's You Only Live Twice. Though it's not one of the best Bond movies, it's still a Bond movie, so that means it's worth checking out. Thank you very much. I always appreciate you watching. If you're into movies, if you're into the classics, if you're into this kind of thing, hit the bell, become a subscriber. Please don't forget to comment, share, like. If you're a returning viewer, thank you very much for your support. I always appreciate it. And please don't forget to look out for the next classic movie review. Everybody take care of each other. Everybody peace out. Till next time, God bless.